On the morning of August 23, 2008, 51-year-old Mike Hearon was preparing to spend the day at his family property in Happy Valley, Tennessee. Mike was a successful home builder, a father, and someone who enjoyed spending time outdoors. That morning, he called his two sons and told them he was heading to the family farm. He planned to mow some grass. Nothing about the plan seemed unusual. Mike had visited the property many times before. He picked up a lawnmower and loaded it onto a trailer. Later that morning, neighbors saw him arrive at the property. Everything appeared completely normal. Then, around 11 o'clock, something happened that would become the last confirmed sighting of Mike Hearon. Neighbors saw him riding away from the property on his four-wheeler. He was heading toward the wooded area near his family's land. He even waved as he passed. There was no obvious sign that anything was wrong. But Mike never came back. Hours passed. His family expected that he would eventually return. But he didn't. The next day, concern began to grow. His truck was still there. His personal belongings were still there. And Mike's family realized that one of his ATVs was missing. They began searching the property, but Mike was nowhere to be found. Then investigators discovered something that made the disappearance even stranger. The missing ATV was eventually found, but Mike was not with it. It had been abandoned roughly a mile from his property. And there was no obvious explanation for why Mike had left it there. A man had ridden into the woods. His ATV was later found, but the man himself had vanished. And that was only the beginning of the mystery. The next day, Mike Hearon's family realized something was seriously wrong. Mike had not returned. His truck was still at the property. The lawnmower and trailer were still there, but Mike was nowhere to be found. His family began searching the area around the property. They soon discovered that one of Mike's ATVs was missing. That was important, because neighbors had already reported seeing Mike riding that ATV away from his property the previous day. The family searched the surrounding land, hoping they would find him nearby. But there was no sign of Mike. The case was reported to the Blount County Sheriff's Office, and a large search effort began. Authorities, emergency personnel, and other agencies searched the surrounding area. The terrain was difficult. The property was surrounded by heavily wooded and mountainous land, close to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Search teams used different methods to try to locate Mike. But there was one problem. They didn't know exactly where he had gone. Then, on August 26th, 3 days after Mike disappeared, a discovery changed the investigation. His green Yamaha Wolverine ATV was found about a mile from his property. It wasn't destroyed. It wasn't abandoned at the bottom of a ravine. It was simply there. But Mike was nowhere around it. Investigators searched the area around the ATV. They also examined nearby locations. Still, there was no sign of Mike. Now the mystery had become even stranger. If Mike had ridden the ATV to that location, why had he left it there? And where had he gone after that? The ATV had been found, but Mike Hearon had not. 3 days after Mike Hearon disappeared, investigators found the one thing that could have told them where he had gone: his green Yamaha Wolverine ATV. It was found about a mile from his family property, near Happy Valley Loop. But the ATV did not provide the answer investigators were hoping for. It was not badly damaged. There was no obvious crash, and Mike was nowhere around it. The ATV had been left on a steep hill. It was in high gear, and the ignition switch was still turned on. For Mike's family, that detail was especially strange. They said leaving the ignition on was not something he normally did. So why was the ATV sitting there? Had Mike stopped because something had happened? Had he gotten off the ATV voluntarily? Or had something happened to him after he reached that location? Investigators searched the surrounding area, but the woods gave them almost nothing. No confirmed trail, no clear explanation, and no sign of Mike. The search became extensive. Authorities and emergency personnel searched the property and surrounding areas. Search teams went through the woods. K9 teams were used. Even ponds on the property were searched, but nothing led investigators to Mike. The ATV had been found, but the person who had been riding it was still missing, and that left investigators with a disturbing possibility. Mike had apparently traveled at least a mile from his property. Then, for reasons nobody could establish, he left the ATV behind. And after that point, his trail simply disappeared. For his family, the question became impossible to ignore. What happened to Mike after he left his ATV? And why was there so little evidence left behind? Once Mike Hearon's ATV was found, the search became much larger. Authorities knew they were dealing with a difficult environment. The area around Mike's property was heavily wooded and mountainous, with the Great Smoky Mountains National Park nearby. More than 100 law enforcement officers, emergency personnel, and volunteers joined the search. They moved through the property and surrounding land on foot, horseback, and ATVs. Search teams also used tracking dogs. Helicopters were brought in to search the surrounding terrain from above. The search continued through difficult weather, including rain. But despite the size of the operation, investigators found no clear trail leading to Mike. They also searched 2 ponds on his property with divers. Later, cadaver dogs were brought in to search the area. Still, nothing led investigators to Mike. No confirmed evidence explained what had happened. And the more the searchers looked, the stranger the case seemed. Mike's ATV had been found. His truck and other belongings were still at his property. But Mike himself had disappeared. The official search continued for several days. Then, on August 29th, authorities suspended the large-scale search, but the investigation did not end. Mike Hearon was still missing. And investigators were left with the same question that had haunted his family from the beginning. How could a man disappear from an area that had been searched so thoroughly? And what happened after he left his ATV behind? For Mike's family, the mystery was far from over. Years have passed since Mike Hearon disappeared, but the central question has never been answered. What happened after Mike left his family property that morning? We know that neighbors saw him riding his ATV. We know that he never returned. And we know that his green Yamaha Wolverine was eventually found about a mile from his property. But Mike himself was never found. The large-scale search eventually ended, but the mystery did not. His case remained open as an endangered missing person case. There have been theories about what might have happened. Some have suggested that Mike could have become lost or suffered an accident in the rugged terrain. Others have wondered whether something more unusual happened. But there is one important distinction. None of those theories has been proven. There is no confirmed explanation for Mike's disappearance, and there is no confirmed evidence establishing exactly what happened after he left his ATV. For his family, the unanswered questions have lasted for years. A man went out for what appeared to be an ordinary day at his family property. He rode into the surrounding countryside, and then he disappeared. His ATV was found. The search teams came. The helicopters flew over the mountains. Dogs searched the area. Divers searched ponds, but Mike Hearon was never located. And that leaves us with the most haunting part of this case. Sometimes a disappearance doesn't leave behind a clear crime scene. Sometimes it leaves behind only a vehicle, a few unanswered questions, and an empty stretch of wilderness. More than a decade later, Mike Hearon's disappearance remains unsolved. And somewhere in the mountains and forests of eastern Tennessee, the answer to what happened that day may still be waiting to be found.